Well, it's Groundhog Day, and you're probably thinking, here's Colin again with another Doubling Down. That's right. This is the third episode of Doubling Down this week. Where can you find that? Across your YouTube channels. And we're not going to go to Santa Anita this week because I have a vengeance against people that don't get their past performances out early in time for us that have kids and families and trying to do these shows. So sorry to Santa Anita, but like I mentioned on my other two episodes, we're going to cover you on the other three. We already covered the Holy Bull with Fierceness returning. We got you the episode yesterday with the Southwest Stakes. So today we are going to cover the Wither Stakes at Aqueduct. I have an extremely special guest. He is a national treasure, and I'm not talking about the horse. Did you like that, Matt? I thought about that all day. Intro just for you, my national treasure line from Matt DeSantis. How are you, my good friend?
I love it. I'm doing great. You had to be there in the chats last year on Trust the Prophets to know that I was banging the drum for National Treasure all year. He was my guy. He was my horse in the Preakness. I kept telling El Hombre, you guys are crazy if you think Mage is going to win this Triple Crown. It's going to be Bob. He's going to come back. He's going to win the first race after the Kentucky Derby. And, National Treasure proved to be even a better horse, quite frankly, than I thought he was going to be. And winning that Pegasus World Cup last week was really an announcement that he's one of the top, I'd say, 2 or 3 horses in the older handicap division with Saudi Crown and White Barrios. So that was quite the effort. And so I appreciate the play on words and the shout out to my boy. And you'll be glad that I'm the only person at Nyra Bets and probably all of Nyra who has a National Treasure poster on his workstation. So I've always stuck by that horse.
And it's probably some food for thought for those owners that have stuck with Bob Baffert to see that path forward, right, of keeping their horses with Bob and say, okay, we'll pass on the Derby, but look what he did with a horse like National. It's almost like a blueprint of, okay, well, forget UCDI and we'll just do what we're going to do. And winning a Pegasus and winning the Preakness, what's wrong with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's important to remember National Treasure, couldn't get the 1.5 miles. But if you have a horse that could, I mean, he ran in the Belmont as well, come up to the Travers. I mean, you have a path. Like you said, there's a blueprint there of let's go Preakness, Belmont, Travers, Breeders' Cup, Pegasus, and then maybe potentially overseas, Dubai, Saudi, for the next step. And that's a very traditional Baffert route in terms of going overseas as a 4-year-old to start that campaign. So, yeah, the owners have the blueprint, and there's a lot of really good horses. I know we're not going to talk about Santa Anita, but Niso seems like a pretty easy single in the Robert B. Lewis. And I don't blame you for not covering Santa Anita because with all the rain out there, it might not even have any turf races. So they might not have the megahertz, which would make Doubling Down a nonsensical procedure to go through.
That's right. And this is Doubling Down. So we're going to give you the daily double for the Wither Stakes with the Toboggan Stakes before it. But first, we got a quick word from our sponsor.
Trust the Prophets is proud to be sponsored by Game of Silks. Go to silks.io to get in the game. Real ownership, real races, real rewards.
And the link in the description for Game of Silks is below this video. Go check them out. It's such an exciting game. I've got horses running Thursday night, and I've got locked, Matt. I minted lock with a syndicate, so I'm already in the game as far as some Derby talk. And speaking of Derby talk, we haven't been able to catch up on our normal Sunday night chats like we did last year. So give me a little laydown of where you kind of have your attention right now on the Derby trail.
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting. Obviously a lot of attention on the Todd Pletcher barn. I mean, Fierceness and Locked are, now that we know the Baffert horses are not eligible at this point and they're not going to be eligible, means that really I think the attention focuses to Florida. But I think the more competitive circuits are going to be Fairgrounds and Oaklawn again. And that's where we've seen some really nice races the last couple of years. And I think that's going to be, even the Southwest Stakes this year, I think is a really competitive race with a lot of speed. A horse like Liberal Arts, I think, is really interesting in that race at 8-1, who could kind of trip out and just be right behind the speed. So, that's an exciting circuit to look at. But I think, you and I talked about this all year last year. Pletcher, Cox, Asmussen, maybe Chad Brown. It's a handful of trainers, right, that you end up looking to that really control the path of the Derby. But I think this year you really got to look to the Sunshine State, and Florida seems to have an absolutely loaded group down there between Tampa Bay and Gulfstream Park.
Yeah, and hot tip, check out race 6 at Gulfstream on Saturday. There's a horse by the name of Born Noble, who I'm very, very intrigued by. I think that's a salty race, and I think he's one that I'm looking forward to stepping out of. And I've kind of honed in on track fandom before the win in the Lecomte. He's a horse that I've had a lot of interest in. Let's get on to this weekend's daily double. We're going to start off with race 8, the Toboggan Stakes, going 7 furlongs. This is a grade 3 at Aqueduct. Matt, where did you end up? I really had a hard time here. I started off with when I handicapped without the morning lines on the 5 and the 7, and I went back and look, okay, 5-2, 8-5. I gotta switch up this ticket. I then liked the 2 for a bit. I liked the 4 for a bit. I liked the 3 for a bit. But one horse I never not like was the 7, Kinetic Sky. He'll definitely be on my ticket. Where did you go?
Yeah, Kinetic Sky looks really tough to get around in this spot for Rick Dutrow. He should sit the perfect trip. Stalking trip, has very good early tactical speed from outside post position. You figure Super Chow is going to get out there on the lead. I think that horse has lost a little bit off of its fastball, though. Maybe not quite as fast as it used to be. And he's not really gotten the job done in terms of winning over the last year, finishing underneath a lot. And while he will be the speed of the speed, getting 7 furlongs has always been a bit of a question mark for Super Chow. I think better at 6 furlongs. And so for that reason alone, I like Kinetic Sky up top as my top selection. He makes a ton of sense. You know, this is a horse that just finished 3rd at 1 1/8 to Krupe. And we saw Krupe come back to finish 3rd in the Pegasus World Cup. So he's been keeping very good company. He has that really strong foundation of being able to go 1 mile and 1 1/8. So handling 7 furlongs is no problem. He's hit the exacta both times he's run that distance before. So I like Kinetic Sky a lot. He's on my ticket. And then Murray, the number 2, is the other one at 8-1, who I'm a little bit interested in. Here's the thing. Under dry, fast conditions, which is what we're going to actually have on Saturday. No rain in the forecast.
No way.
We're going to have dry, fast conditions. Under dry, fast conditions, since the start of the Aqueduct Fall Meet, only 12% of dirt sprint winners have come from more than 3 lengths off the pace at second call. So looking at closers is not really an effective strategy in these sprints. I want to see horses that are on or near the lead. Kinetic Sky is going to be right on the lead. And I think Murray is another example of a horse that has good early tactical speed, used to be in the Bob Baffert barn, could never really stay healthy, came over here to Brittany Russell, has put together 4 nice efforts in Laurel. This is obviously going to be a step up in class, but this is a horse that has good tactical speed, faded just a bit at 1 mile last time out. I like the cut back to 7 furlongs. I think this is one, I didn't want to go single into the next race. And so kind of covering my bases a little bit with Murray, going 2 deep, Kinetic Sky and Murray in this first leg.
Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth for Murray on being close, on looking at the improvement from the Brittany Russell barn. Where can people find your track stats? Because I didn't listen to your track stats when I made the other horse in this race that I'm going to pick, which is the 3 Maniwa, who, I wrote down he was a grade 2 winner in 2022. Obviously, that was a while ago. Is one of those horses that's going to be coming late. But I thought the company this horse has been keeping has been pretty solid. Hoist the Gold, Tejano Twist, Bango. Bango's a favorite because we used to play on words with my dog named Banjo. Elite Power, obviously that was 2022. I don't know that there's a lot of pace in here, so it worries me about Maniwa. I know you said Super Chow is going to get out there. It was kind of the only early speed. In fact, I'll switch to the Brisnet and they'll give it to you right there, which look at that. It's very rare you only see one horse with the E or the EP designation, and then you've got a 5 over 1s and 2s. So that was where I was really struggling on, was Super Chow going to get out there and just run away with this? And now you've given me one of your track stats where people can find where.
You can find it on Nyra Bets on the app or nyrabets.com. They're updated every week, and they look at how favorites are performing. They look at how favorites are performing by different distances, surfaces, as well as different classifications of races. And then they also look at winning trip types by different surface and distance. So turf route, turf sprints, dirt route, dirt sprints, 1-turn miles, etc. And looking at 5 different tracks. So I update it every week for Aqueduct, Oaklawn Park, Santa Anita, Gulfstream Park, and Tampa Bay Downs. So you can get that every week. It's updated on Tuesdays, and you can get that on Nyra Bets.
No wonder you take so long to answer my text these days, because that's what you're doing. You're working on the track stats. So before we move on, I just want to ask you about Maniwa. Am I in trouble there with a horse that's going to be kind of far behind the 8-year-old, or does he have a shot here to get it done?
He's a horse I like a lot. I think he was a little bit of a toss for me just because I was worried about the pace scenario. Setting aside the track stats, I just didn't think you had a strong enough early pace for him to potentially run into. Now, the distance is going to be beneficial. I think, he's a horse that does get stronger, I think, with that 7 furlongs. And so he is going to make his run. He's going to come. He's a horse I kind of would prefer using underneath, maybe in some different ways. But I just think Super Chow's the only speed and should be able to set the fractions that he wants on the front end for Madison Oliver, the jockey. So that's one that I was a little hesitant about, but has kept, to your point, probably the best class and company out of all these horses in this race in terms of the dirt sprints that he's been in going back to 2022, but really good company. And you listed those horses, very strong group.
That last race was on the synthetic when he was coming late, and it was only 6 furlongs. So like you mentioned, if he gets to the 7 furlongs, it's going to be the extra distance that maybe allows him to get there, and hopefully maybe moving back to the dirt, get back to those old ways. So we move on to the marquee event of the day at Aqueduct, the Withers Stakes. And on the right there, you can see that we have some owners in the Game of Silks who have an opportunity to take home some real cash, 1% of the purse of $250,000. So $2,500 being paid out to those 1 through 4 finishers if they own the horse. Field of 9. I thought the race, the Holy Bull, is obviously fierceness. I thought the Southwest was very competitive, but I think you have a pretty competitive race here as well at New York. Where did you end up?
Yeah, I think I agree. It's a competitive field, 9 horses, and I thought they, you have a lot of horses coming in from different tracks, some from the Mid-Atlantic, and horses coming in with different situations, some coming in from allowance races, some coming in from stakes races, some just breaking their maiden. I do think Light Line for Brad Cox, number 3, is your worthy favorite in this spot. He really impressed me last time out, where he broke a little slowly, kind of threw his head a little bit prior to the gate opening, and was just a little bothered, I think, by the assistant starter there, and was dead last out of a field of 12, and showed something he had never shown before, which he passed the entire field except for the one runaway horse, Carboni, who, by the way, is going to be the 9-2 third choice in the Southwest Stakes this weekend. So, no disrespect losing to a gate to wire winner in that regard, and kind of was running against the track the whole way. So I think Light Line looks really tough. He's got good tactical speed, but he showed a new dimension. Manny Franco and Brad Cox, that's a tough combination to beat. And lately, Cox has been absolutely on fire here in Aqueduct, winning stakes races with horses like Comparative, Drumroll Please, Jin. I think he's won 4 stakes races at Aqueduct in 2024 already. So he's been a very hot trainer there. I am a little interested in Speedrunner, the number 1 horse, the gun runner for Todd Pletcher, who broke his maiden last time out, doing the distance, 1 1/8 miles at the track at Aqueduct. So being familiar with the trip and the terrain, I think, is important. He got a very perfect trip that last time out. We'll have to have an opportunity to take a step forward, but from the inside rail, should have a ground-saving trip. And then the other horse that I'm a little bit interested in is the 5, Seminole Chief. And this is a horse for Jack Sisterson, who's Florida bred, but broke its maiden actually up in Finger Lakes up here in New York, went back down to Florida and ran a really good race last time out, winning a $300,000 Florida restricted stakes race, and put away a couple of horses that were pretty nice sprinters in Mattingly and another undefeated horse. I think it's a really interesting spot for him to be in. He's got good tactical speed, can track the speed of El Grande O, who presumably will be up on the front end. And I just think if you look at the fractions he ran in that race, those are pretty strong fractions for 1 1/16 miles. He's tested over 2 turns. At 12-1, Trevor McCarthy is good at getting these horses with long odds home. I'm going to go with Seminole Chief to kind of round out a 1-3-5 ticket in the second leg.
Yeah, I liked the Light Line as well. I like the fact that what you said about the last race, but also the first race was able to be really close to the lead, and so has shown the ability to kind of do 2 different styles of being successful. And you mentioned the distance. Remember, this race is at 1.125 miles. This is one of the longest, if not the longest, Kentucky Derby prep race. Most of them are 1.16 miles, right? So you like to look at the horses that, like you said, have a good foundation of going the distance. Hit Show last year had 1.16 miles under the belt before coming into the Withers and being successful in that race with Arctic Arrogance. Remember, I think he was on the front end or with some of the early speed in that one. So exactly the same reasons. You got Speedrunner, who's gone 1.125 miles at Aqueduct, 5-1. I absolutely cannot leave that horse off. A gun runner. I put in red the restricted races for Seminole Chief, and that I did put an arrow with the increasing speed figures, which is something we both are always talking about. I went with the 7, though, Mission Beach, as my third horse here. For Brittany Russell with Dylan Davis aboard, has had the increasing speed figures, was a horse that was previously trained by Bob Baffert, gets a victory in an optional claimer after moving for Brittany Russell. But look at the season sandwich between those two victories of who this horse lost to. And you talked about it right here in the opener of Nysos, now 28 length behind Nysos. So it's not like I'm using, well, if she could hang with Nysos, then he'll be able to hang here. But Nutella Fella also, remember that impressive performance at Saratoga. And Timberlake was in that race as well, who we are very aware of. So Mission Beach, at least in those middle two legs, had some of that, as we like to call it, solid company. And the horse is sired by Colin. So although we talked about the, wanting that foundation, I'm going right against what I said immediately later when I picked my next horse, which isn't great. But when you see Colin on top, I tend to think that maybe the distance isn't going to be as hard of a problem. 2 for 4 on a fast track, and hopefully Mission Beach at 6-1. That was kind of a little bit more of the price play for me, as opposed to liking Mission Beach in this spot.
Yeah, I think that that's a horse that I will be interested in seeing the effect of how well Murray runs in the Toboggan, whether or not that has an impact on the price that you end up getting on Mission Beach. Both were former Bob Baffert horses, now trained by Brittany Russell, going into a stakes race in New York. If Murray were to upset the field, I wonder if that actually hurts the value that you would end up getting on Mission Beach, because people would suddenly go, it's the Brittany to Bob angle. We're hammering this horse. And so that's just something I just noticed that when I was putting my ticket together, and I thought, that would be an interesting thing to look at to see if, we can never test the counterfactual, but it would be interesting to look at that to see if one result might have an impact on the other. But, to your point here on this slide, there's going to be a lot of speed potentially in this race. So it does set up well for horses that know how to rate effectively off the pace.
Yeah, and go back through these past performances, because you'd be amazed at the amount of times you're going to read how many times these horses had trouble at the break. All of them. It's just bump start, stumbled break, bumped at the break. Literally almost all of them have a little bit of trouble coming out of the gate here. So it'd be interesting with that early speed. I'm willing to bet that 2 or 3 of them are just going to have trouble and are immediately going to be done. And hopefully they are not part of the ones that are on our ticket. And there you have it, our ticket. I'm going to go 237 with the 137. Pay attention to those will pays, because the 7 in the first could affect the price that you might get. So you want to maybe put a little bit more on the 7 into the 137 to cover your $9 bet. Matt, you're going 2-7 with the 135, which will cost you $6. Matt has had some very good success here on doubling down. And hopefully we can, this is the third one this week, Matt. So hopefully we can go 3 for 3. It's going to be fun watching all 3 of them when you've done 3 shows, to kind of like, I hit that one, but I missed this one, and I got that one. So we'll have some fun with that. One more time, where can everybody find you and your content?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me on Twitter at the handle @FailedToMenace. And if you follow me there, you'll be able to get all my content on Nyra Bets. And the great part about all that content is it's all free. Listen, we hope that you certainly sign up and use Nyra Bets. But even if you don't, if you just go to the website and go to download the app, all of the content we have there, from handicapping and betting 101 tutorials, synthetic race guides, all the race analyses for all the big days, long shots of the day blog, track stats. All that stuff is a free resource for horse players. We want to try to give people as much information as they can so they can make an educated choice when wagering.
If you're joining into this episode from the Game of Silks crowd, you might be new to this channel. Matt is absolutely one of the best handicappers around, and he's also an awesome guy. And if you see him in New York, be sure to swing by and say
Yes.
hello. Until next time, Matt, always a pleasure to have you. Thanks so much for joining us. This is Doubling Down. Please like and subscribe.